Welcome to the TLT Online Training Library. My name is Abigail Chavette. I am a Human Resources intern with TLT, Tomorrow's Leaders Today, and today I want to talk about communication skills. Before we begin, here's a quick overview of our agenda for today. We are going to discuss what communication skills are, why they are important, verbal styles of communication, nonverbal communication, the importance of listening, cross-cultural communication, as well as provide ways to improve professional communication and to improve delivery. I want to first begin by discussing what are communication skills. Communication skills can be defined as the ways in which we code and decode messages and share information with one another. Communication skills encompass a wide variety of different channels or ways of communicating, including verbal, written, presentations, social media, and more outlets. To have strong communication skills means that one is able to speak and listen effectively. They are able to interpret gestures, body language, and emotions, and they are able to use the right style of communication on the right occasions. Now that we've clarified what communication skills are, I want to talk about why they are so important. Strong communication skills can help improve interpersonal relationships, as you are better able to listen and talk to those you love. They can also help increase self-confidence, as you are better equipped to handle conversations and other communication situations you will encounter. They also help navigate cross-cultural communication, which is increasingly important in today's workforce. They can also help improve your conflict resolution skills, which are highly important, as well as your ability to respond to crisis. Strong communication skills ultimately improve workplace efficiency as well. Now, I want to talk about the verbal styles of communication, and I'm going to be focusing on a model that includes 4 different communication styles. It is important to note that communication styles are influenced by different behavioral traits in individuals, as well as by circumstance, and can be learned or unlearned over time. The first category is passive communication. These communicators often have difficulty expressing themselves and tend to accommodate others in conversation. This can lead to miscommunications, as they avoid expressing their true feelings. The second category is aggressive communicators. They tend to dominate the conversations they take part in, which can lead to frequent interruptions or failure to listen. The third category is passive-aggressive communicators. These are communicators who seem passive on the surface, but their statements communicate an underlying resentment towards the other party. The final category is assertive communication. Assertive communicators encourage open and honest dialogue while still considering the needs of others. Assertive communication involves utilizing I statements to express feelings and communicating needs confidently without dismissing those of your conversation partner. Assertive communication is the ideal communication state, but it is important to note that these styles are fluid and are important to understand within oneself and be able to recognize them within others so we can base how we communicate in a situation on the appropriate circumstances. Now that we have touched on verbal communication, I would like to move on to nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication is just as important as verbal communication, as it can completely alter the messages contained in verbal communication. And one must be keenly aware of these cues displayed by others, as well as how they are displaying cues themselves. There are many different types of nonverbal communication, but here are a few. Facial expressions, posture, gestures, eye contact, and personal space all contribute to nonverbal communication cues. It is important to remember that communication is not only focused on the messages that you are communicating to others, but also how you are able to interpret the messages they are communicating to you. Now I want to focus on the importance of listening in communication. In order to be an effective and strong communicator, one must be able to actively listen. Active listening is an intentional technique where a listener is able to interpret the speaker's needs and underlying messages based on their verbal and nonverbal communication. Active listeners should also provide feedback to the speaker without passing judgment, and be sure not to interrupt with their own opinions, and focus instead on truly understanding what the speaker is attempting to communicate. Here are some tips on how to be a better active listener. One should be fully attentive and present. You should also pay close attention to a speaker's nonverbal cues. You should ask clarifying questions when appropriate. You should also ask summarizing questions in order to demonstrate that you are listening as well as understanding what they are trying to say. You should ask open-ended questions to communicate your interest in hearing what they have to say. You should also listen without judgment or evaluation unless it is specifically requested by the speaker. You should also reflect the feelings of the speaker back. If they are telling a sad story and you are smiling, this does not communicate a very good message. Instead, you should match your emotions to those of the speaker and of the circumstances. Communication also varies widely on a global scale, and it's important to understand that certain phrases or gestures may mean one thing in your culture, but something completely different in another. And it is important we are able, as communicators, to adapt. Cross-cultural communication is the process of recognizing both the similarities and differences among different cultural groups so that these groups can effectively engage with one another in a given context. Since no audiences or speakers' background or life experiences are the same, it is critical for you to understand how their culture influences their communication as well as their interpretation of your messages. One can improve their cross-cultural communication by becoming more aware of unconscious barriers to communication or their subconscious biases. They can also practice being more open-minded. You can also ask open-ended questions to those of other cultures and utilize active listening skills. The most important is to be able to learn from others and be open to what they have to teach you. Now that we have discussed much of what makes up communication skills, I want to discuss some ways that you can improve your communication skills in a professional environment. To improve your professional communication skills, you should make sure to keep your audience in mind and tailor the language you use to communicate your message to their language. It is also important to keep your message simple and concise, as it makes it easier for the audience to understand. You should also ensure that you are using the most appropriate form of communication. You can evaluate the form of communication necessary based on the urgency and other contextual factors of a situation. This will determine if a face-to-face conversation, an email, or other form of communication is the most effective. You should also ask for feedback from audience members or have them summarize what they heard you say in order to ensure that your message has been communicated to them clearly and effectively. Finally, you should always be working on improving your active listening skills so that you can better understand and interact with those around you. I also want to provide you with some ways to improve your delivery. To improve your delivery, you should first set clear intentions for the message you want to deliver to your conversation partner or the audience. Secondly, you should think forward, up, and out in terms of your posture and gestures. Number 3, you should utilize vocal tactics such as tone, pace, and volume to communicate your message most effectively and match an appropriate emotion, as well as minimize vocal fillers such as or like. 4, you should be comfortable in your space. Make sure not to hide behind a desk or a podium. Number 5, try to avoid fidgeting or pacing, as this makes you and the audience more nervous. Tip number 6 is to make eye contact. This is very important in effective communication as it demonstrates that you are engaged. And finally, number 7, you should be sure to match the language and vocal patterns that you are using to the content of your message, as mismatches may make the audience feel uncomfortable or confused. I hope that this presentation has clarified communication skills for you as well as provided you with some helpful advice that you will be able to use to strengthen your communication skills. Thank you from TLT, Tomorrow's Leaders Today, for utilizing our online training library. Here are the resources I used to put together this presentation. Thank you.